Hey, what's happening, everybody? I'm Larry Roberts, and this is another episode of the Readily Random Podcast.
Hey, you could be larger than life, bigger than the world, living out the hopes and dreams of every boy and every girl. You could fly higher than the sky.
What is happening, everybody? Larry Roberts back with another awesome episode. Man, I know you guys have been watching daily as I've been doing my Facebook Live podcast / broadcast, whatever you want to call it, cast, as a part of NAPOD POMO, or National Podcast Post Month. And I have to admit, I have made every day. And many of you have been there every day of the way. And I greatly appreciate it. And of course, I appreciate you not only listening to what we have dubbed 10 minutes in, because that's the goal, is to do 10 minutes a day at a minimum. I appreciate you listening to that, but also to continue listening to Readily Random. I had one of the best reviews that I've ever I don't want to say ever come across, because all reviews that are positive are awesome. But I got to share this one with you because it just hits the nail right on the head. So let me read it for you. It's a short one. So this just came in yesterday. I get these updates from chartable.com, and it tells me how my podcast is doing and listens and all that fun stuff and where it ranks, if it ranks, and it also shows me any new reviews that I get. So this one here from a gentle person called Melonhead09. Excellent podcast from a guy with the coolest radio voice, which I'll agree. You know, I mentioned earlier on 10 minutes in that I had to undo my hat one more notch, though. When I read that was kind of cool. But really, this is where the fun kicks in. To describe the show, it's like knowing you want candy, but don't care which one. So you just punch the vending machine keypad, and then you're happy with what comes out. I mean, that is spot on. That is me, and that's why do we call it Readily Random? Well, that's why. You know, we get serious around here, but most of the time, I like to just have a lot of fun. And even when we're serious, we'll always steer that ship back into the fun harbor. And that was kind of cheesy sounding, but it's what came off the tip of my tongue, so what the heck, we'll use it. So I have a guest here, and she is looking at me like, do I get to talk at all? And her name is Anissa Hudak. And Anissa is a Reiki yoga master. Did I say that right? I think I did my homework right.
You were close.
Okay, well, I'll let you correct me here. And just let me say more things that aren't right about you, and then I'll let you come. Anissa, she is a yoga master, let's put it that way, and I'll let her correct the pronunciation. So her life has been intertwined with PTSD and various forms of trauma, as well as the military. Anissa is the daughter of a Vietnam veteran. Pretty cool there, huh? Also married to an active duty member in Iraq and Afghanistan for over 20 years. And for 3 years, she volunteered at the Warrior Transition Battalion at Fort Riley, Kansas, providing yoga therapy, meditation, and other holistic treatments to the soldiers, family members, and staff. I fully support our soldiers and all branches of the military, all 7 uniformed branches of service, not all military. We learned that last week also. So, but anyhow, let's talk to Anissa. Let's get some corrections going. Anissa, thank you so much for joining me here on another episode of Readily Random. Please feel free to correct me as you see fit.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. Thank you so very much. And yes, my name is Anissa Hudak, and I am a Reiki master and a certified yoga therapist. So you were close.
I was close.
You were close.
I was saying Reiki at first. You know, when I first started practicing for the show, I was like, "Is it Reiki, Crikey? I don't know." But
Crikey.
Oh, yeah. It's two different continents, I think. There, right?
I think so.
Yeah. So anyway, Go ahead.
Yeah, I was. Yes, there might be 7 uniformed services, but there's only one that really counts, and that's the Army.
Uh-oh.
Go Army, beat Navy. So yeah, my husband was active duty Army for over 23 and a half years, actually. And he is now retired. And so he's actually a chemistry teacher. So he just blows stuff up on a smaller scale.
Okay, cool. That's a lot of fun. It's funny because I was at work today, and we have a grizzled old vet that works here at the office. I think every office does. And he just gets up and wanders around. You know, he should have retired about 20 years ago, but he don't like his wife, so he comes to work. That's what he says.
Right.
That's what he says anyways. And he kind of sauntered up and just out of the blue started telling us about grenade training and how his trainees, there's always a couple of them that wouldn't put their head down, and the grenade training is the only place where you could physically, lay a hand on a trainee. And that was because you had to make sure their head was below deck so that when the explosion went off, nobody got injured. And he said it was funny because they'd always send him a list. They go, these are the ones that aren't going to duck. And sure enough, he said the vast majority of the time, those are the ones that didn't duck. So
I've heard stories like that. Yeah. So yeah, as you said, I'm a daughter of a Vietnam vet. And so my knowledge of PTSD and trauma kind of started, when I was born. I've lived with it in some sense, all my life. And then, of course, I have my own PTSD and trauma. I'm a 2-time rape survivor. I'm a bereaved parent. And so, I know it intimately.
Wow. Okay.
And I think you do what you know. And so it became really easy for me to kind of fall into this where I, guide people in releasing trauma from their body.
Yeah, you had mentioned when we were talking before the show started that how PTSD and trauma personifies itself within the body. And I was hoping maybe you could expand on that a little bit and kind of, I know how it does for me, but I can only speak for myself. And I'm assuming there are key signals that are out there that people can recognize in themselves and go, maybe this could be tied to PTSD or a traumatic event sometime in my life.
Well, you're talking about triggers, things that kind of set you off and you realize, oh gosh, my palms are getting sweaty and my stomach is kind of churning and, things like that. And those would be considered triggers.
Okay.
What I was talking about is actually what happens when you are in a traumatic experience and how does it, we know the PTSD and trauma as mental health issues, but it actually starts in the body first before it actually manifests as a mental health issue.
Okay.
And so that was kind of what I was talking about. So let me ask you, have you ever seen 2 dogs fight?
Of course.
And what do you notice after they're done fighting and they're starting to walk away from one another? What do?
Well, they start, I'm going to throw it out there. I don't know. They start checking themselves for wounds, maybe? Is that the right answer? No? They look back at the other one and say, I wish you would. No? Maybe I should have done this. They start thinking, if only I had bit him right there. No? That's 3 strikes. Help a brother out.
3 strikes. Okay. So have you ever noticed that they shake?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes.
Right? And we don't think anything of it, right?
That's why I probably didn't come up with it.
Okay. So they're actually resetting their central nervous system.
Okay.
And so what happens when they're in fight mode? They're in that, gnarly state. They shake and they're back to being your puppy. They've reset their central nervous system. So I want you to remember that. Okay. So now you and I are in a car accident. And what happens after you're in a traumatic experience? What do?
I cry. I cry.
Okay.
That's truth. I cry. I cry all the time. I cry at every little thing. But yeah, anytime I get emotionally distressed in any regard, whether it's anger or whether it's anything, I cry. And you're shaking too, of course. You're shaking. And,
okay.
I even had that happen today because they didn't want to take the sweater back that I bought because it had 2 dog hairs on it. And I bought it on Friday. She goes, I can't take this back. It's got dog hair all over it. I said, there's 2. And I don't know, maybe it was a trigger. I don't know. And I was going to talk to you about it too. But it just, man, I just saw red. I was livid. And
well, I think that's just stupidity. You're reacting to stupidity.
it was insane. It was exactly. But I don't know. Karen came from the back. She had an attitude problem right out of the gate. And then she hit me. I had my receipt. I had everything. I followed all the rules. And she still tried to, I'm like, stop
She didn't want to do her job.
Yeah, but man, it was something else. I don't know why I went from 0 to 100 so quick on that one. But anyways, I've derailed the conversation. Go right ahead.
So prior to us having our car accident, we were in like homeostasis. We're in our upper echelon brain, right? We're doing critical thinking. We could do math. We could do all kinds of stuff, right? Well, we also have another part of the brain called the reptilian brain. And that handles all of our basic life systems,
Mm-hmm.
blinking, belching, knowing that you have to go to the bathroom, breathing. I mean, just stuff we don't think about, right?
Right.
But that's also where the trauma mechanism is. So our fight, flight, freeze mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're in this car accident and boom, our body goes right into the reptilian brain. Now, in order for us to, again, reset our central nervous system, we need to shake, just like those dogs. I hate to break it to everybody, but we are animals.
Oh, I agree 100%.
We're animals,
Yeah.
and we have to reset the central nervous system, and that's how we do it. But as humans, we hate to see someone shaking. I mean, what do we do when we see someone shaking? Oh, come here. Let me hold you.
Yeah.
Let me strap you to a board so you don't hurt yourself.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Well, what happens if we don't shake? What happens if we don't reset that central nervous system?
You store the trauma.
Ding, 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 ding. Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
Look at that. Boy, I learned quick.
Hence, just wheel that PTSD right on in.
Right. Okay. Okay. See, and that's something that it's always kind of my wife and I, we tend to, we've both been through some pretty hardcore lives ourselves, right? So we tend to think of, we think we're all right. We think we're normal, right? But what is normal? Don't get all choked up. But we go, now here's the other thing is, and the audience already knows this as well, but we're recovered alcoholics, right? 6 years sober as of 2 days ago. So that's pretty kick-ass.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
it's
see,
wonderful.
right. So we obviously aren't that normal, right? Because we were slamming back the alcohol to kind of curb the pain, right?
You were self-medicating.
Exactly. So, but at the same time, we look at some folks and go, there's no way. You have PTSD from what? Maybe they got in a fist fight or something, and you'll see it and you'll read about it or whatever. And now they're suffering from PTSD. Or you'll hear about a court case where they're suffering from PTSD or something. You're like, dude, just suck it up. There's no way you have PTSD from that. That's ridiculous. You're just using the initials to get more money or get more sympathy or pity or whatever it may be.
Okay, so there are people out there who are scamming the system. I totally agree with that.
Cool.
That being said, everybody's threshold is different. So you and I could be in the same car accident and I could walk away with PTSD and you don't get it. It really depends on a lot of different things. What was your stress like prior to the accident that day? What was your stress like prior to the accident your entire life? What is your DNA like? Now, for me, I was born from a Vietnam vet. That PTSD already got into his DNA. So I got substandard DNA. I'm already, yeah, I know.
I got plenty of that myself. Let's get into that for just a second. And I know I'm interrupting and I apologize. But saying that the PTSD gets down to the molecular level or the DNA level.
Yeah.
Help me understand how does that, I mean, I don't understand how it goes that deep. Is PTSD not just, or maybe it's just personified as a chemical imbalance in your brain, or you're not quite getting enough dopamine, or maybe you're getting a little too much adrenaline? I mean, I don't know. But how does it go all the way down to the DNA level?
Left unchecked.
Okay.
It can actually get into the DNA.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if you have someone like me who's a yoga therapist working with you,
right,
you may not have that issue.
Okay.
But when we look at our Vietnam vets, most of them didn't have any help.
Correct.
So we have a whole generation of kids walking around with tainted DNA. I hate to say that. It sounds so awful, but it's the truth.
Careful. You're going to get somebody upset.
It is what it is. And I have it too. I mean, it is what it is. And we know that trauma and PTSD is generational. So at what point are you going to stop the cycle? But yes, it can affect the DNA. Absolutely.
Well, it's interesting how it manifests, I guess. And generation to generation, do you think, or do you know over the generations that it was manifest differently, or did we have better suppression systems at the time? Because it seems like if you think back in I mean, even like my dad, either one of them, my bio or my stepdad, who showed up at a year and a half old, so he was essentially the one that raised me, but he was a dick too. So, it is what it is. But he was the suck it up buttercup kind of guy, and although he was a little less than manly himself, most regards, he still just did not demonstrate the effects of what I have to assume would be PTSD in himself. Now, I understand you can't analyze or psychoanalyze or even determine what was a matter with him at the time or whatever, but he handled it differently. And it seems like that generation handled it differently than even my generation. I'm a Gen Xer, or the next generation, which was Gen, Y, maybe X, Y? I don't know. I don't know who they are. I get all confused, but I know I'm Gen X. So the other generations prior to that seem to have handled it more astutely. And as the generations have progressed, now we have millennials that cry over teddy bears. So help me understand how things. Do you have an understanding of how things have changed over the years?
Stress load.
Stress load. Okay.
I mean, they lived a much simpler life. They certainly didn't have the kind of stress that we have. And, also, too, they were raised differently. I mean, our kids today are, we've got helicopter parents and, they get a hangnail and, they have to go to the ER and you know what I'm saying? I mean,
no, I do 100%. Sure.
They've got parents going with them to job interviews and I mean, they can't quite function on their own.
Yeah, I've seen it happen. I have seen it happen. Yes.
And so totally different stress load. Personally, I credit it to cell phones. I think cell phones have got to be the downfall of mankind.
They're definitely a contributing factor, sure.
Because there's lack of socialization.
Right.
And that socialization, I mean, that's all they had back then was to talk to people. They didn't have a TV. They didn't have phones. All you could do was sit and talk to somebody. So I think that has a lot to do with it. Stress load is the big thing.
And no viable outlet or no, like for instance, with your yoga, I had an experience with yoga while I was getting sober, and it wasn't for me. Okay. And I think it was maybe a lot of it was timing. A lot of it was a lack of maturity at the time, even though it was only 6 years ago. I just didn't take it as, I took it from, I'm a karate guy. I'm an old school karate guy. And I used to compete and I fought and all that good kind of stuff. So if it wasn't filled with testosterone, I wasn't doing it. And for me to get in there and go downward dog, or that's the only position I can even say. But, in front of a bunch of other ladies that were dressed scantily for yoga. And I mean, it didn't feel appropriate. Maybe it would have felt different in an all male yoga class. Maybe it would, I don't know. All I know is that I was resistant to doing it in the first place. My therapist just said, Larry, give it a try. Come on. It's going to help. I'm like, dude, no. If there's no punching bag, I don't need to be in there. Just do it. So I gave into it. I lasted about 5 minutes. And as soon as we got into some awkward positions where hip thrust, and I'm just like, I got up and excused myself and walked out, apologized, and it just wasn't for me. So I have given more thought to yoga simply because my alcoholism at least plays a significant part in my chronic pain. So every joint in my body is horrendously damaged somehow because, I mean, all the way from my pinky toe to my pinky finger and everywhere in between, every bone and every joint screams. And I take insane amounts of medication to fix that. So I would imagine yoga could possibly help in that arena as well. So if you would, let me shut up about myself and you tell me how yoga not just specifically would work for Larry, but how it would work for anybody else listening as well, and how it can help us overcome some of the PTSD and some of the trauma that we've experienced.
All right, so that's like a two-part question.
It's about a 20-part question, really. So just take it as you will.
Okay, so let's think of yoga as a big old pie.
Okay, I love pie.
Right, Nobody can resist pie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's all kinds of slices in this pie. There's hot yoga, there's Bikram, there's Kundalini, there's like all kinds of yoga. So I don't know what kind of yoga you went and took. I have no idea what kind of class you took. Okay. Now, think of yoga therapy as a slice out of that pie.
Okay.
Now, within that slice, there's all these little other types of slices. There is yoga for cancer. There's yoga for arthritis. There's yoga for heart conditions. There's yoga for trauma. There's yoga for MS, Parkinson's, you name it. Okay. And all of us therapists have a specialty. Mine just happens to be trauma, PTSD.
Okay.
So does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Okay. So the first thing you want to do is when you want to go take a yoga class, you need to find something that's specific to you. So if you are looking specifically for trauma, find yourself a yoga therapist that deals with trauma. Don't go to a hot yoga class. That's not going to help you. Now, those are like fitness-based yoga classes, and those are really great classes. And those teachers are usually very well certified in that particular type of, method of yoga. That's great. But if you have an emotional release on the mat, or if worse, you're triggered on the mat, they are not prepared educationally to handle that. I am.
Okay.
So you really need to find the right type of yoga for you. So that's number one. Why yoga therapy? So have you ever heard of your psoas muscle?
Nope. I've sat on my psoas before, but not.
Love that. That's the first time I've heard that. I like that.
Oh, really? That's cool.
It is.
Ah, yes. I love original jokes.
That is wonderful. No, psoas, PSOAS.
Okay. No, I still haven't. No.
So you don't know?
Mm-mm.
You have it.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of your hip flexors?
Yes.
Same thing.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And you have two of those.
Yes.
Okay. So now your psoas, to me, is your most important muscle in your entire body.
Okay.
You know why?
Mobility.
Have you ever been injured or sick or hurt and your body instantly curls up into the fetal position?
Of course.
Okay. And it does that because it wants to protect all of these internal organs here in your trunk, right?
Correct.
Okay. That's what the psoas, your hip flexors, do. They are totally in control of that movement. So without that, you would die.
That's okay. Yeah, that's pretty important.
Pretty important, right?
Yeah.
The other thing that these muscles happen to do is that they're the emotional warehouse of your body. So all of your joy, your happiness, your frustration, your anger, your grief, everything is held there. When
Yeah.
we are working on trauma and PTSD, we want to allow these muscles to have little releases. Now, we can do a big release, but it's scary. So we work in class doing little releases. Now, sometimes my students will say, oh my gosh, my thighs are shaking. Other times they don't feel it at all. And if they do feel shaking, I'm like, shake. This is good. Because you're getting rid of junk. You're leaving baggage behind. You don't need to carry it. So that's one of the things that we focus on in a trauma type of yoga. The other reason why yoga is so good, especially for people with trauma, is PTSD is a very inflammatory type of disorder. And so we see an increase of diabetes, all kinds of inflammatory diseases. And so when you are doing yoga, we are moving a lot of fluid around in your body. And that actually helps to bring down the inflammation.
I can see that.
So there's a lot of different reasons why you want to do it. Now, I know that you tried it 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And so here's what I would like to say. You're a different person now. You're a different person than you were 6 months ago,
Oh, yeah.
18 months ago.
Yeah.
Probably even 6 hours ago.
Eh.
Maybe.
Well, I was very angry earlier, and I'm not angry now. So
Right?
you
So
got me.
there you go.
There you go. Different person.
You are. And so when you are trying different, techniques in dealing with your trauma, you got to get yourself a notebook and you got to write down, on this day, I tried this and this is what occurred and I didn't like it. I liked it, whatever. And then go back to it in 6 months. Go back to it in a year because you're going to be a different person and you're going to be in a different place and you're going to then be able to maybe hear it better. Maybe it'll work for you, the second time around. But never give up trying and always go back to things.
Always
That's
go
my
back to
shtick.
things. Oh, no, I love your shtick. Always go back to things from a therapeutic perspective or even just from an educational perspective or both.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And I think that once people really understand the science behind what we do, you're more apt to do it. I know that that's what I found is that when I was taking teacher training classes and I was really understanding the science behind yoga for therapy, yoga for trauma, excuse me, I was like, oh, well, why wouldn't I do this? Like, this makes perfect sense. A lot of times we use aromatherapy. We use essential oils. Essential oils is really neat, the way it actually affects the brain. And with essential oils, if someone is starting to have, a trigger or an emotional release or what have you, I can actually get their attention within 3 to 5 seconds and maybe have them not be triggered
Interesting. Just due to a smell?
just due to a smell. So, when you find out the science, and this is all science,
Sure.
that's what really, truly blew me away. This is not voodoo. It is not, black magic. There is not some, woman over a cauldron making all this stuff up. I mean, this is legit science stuff. And that's what blew me away. And I really started learning more and more about it. And then I was like, why wouldn't I do this? I mean, talk therapy is great. It has its place. Medications are necessary. But then there's this other part of you. You
Sure.
have to release the trauma from your body to really find full healing.
So let me ask you this, because I watched a video earlier in preparation for our conversation, and it was probably the very first YouTube video that I came across looking for therapeutic yoga, and it had, and I used Reiki?
Reiki.
Okay, I looked specifically for Reiki, trying to figure out how to say it, but apparently I didn't learn very well. So, but what she was doing was she immediately had the patient lay down on the table, and the lady had an issue with her calf. I guess she had been working out too hard and her calf was sore, or maybe she had a Charlie horse or something. Who knows? And she started off with the whole, we're going to start here with the third eye and work our way down and do the chakras and all that fun stuff. Now, I understand there are spiritual elements to yoga. That's fine. There's spiritual elements to martial arts. Do I think they're associated with do I think they're similar, and do I think they serve similar purposes? I truly do. There are things I did in martial arts at 155 pounds that probably I could not do today, and that most larger people couldn't do either. I mean, there was a time, I'm going to brag, my best break ever, I got into breaking for a while there for demonstrative purposes, and I would break concrete. And my best break was 12 2¼ inch scalloped gardening bricks. And so you do the math, it's over 2 feet of concrete, like 2.5 feet of concrete. At 155 pounds, little bitty guy, tall but little, I had to stand on extra concrete just so that I could maneuver myself into the break. But anyhow, my point is that I had learned to breathe properly, and I had learned to essentially, and the way I tell everybody is I overcame my fight or flight syndrome because I knew there was a very high risk that my hand was going to break when I hit this concrete. I had done it numerous times, and I broke my hand numerous times. But in breaking, when you're breaking hard objects like concrete, one of two things breaks, either your hand or the concrete. And you have to resolve yourself to that in order to even come close to striking with the accuracy or the power you need to fulfill the break. So I learned to do this somehow. Okay, and I had a breaking instructor. He was a world champion breaking instructor, and he was phenomenal, Mr. Cox. And he may listen to my podcast, so shout out. But I don't really know how. And after about 2 years, I lost it. I lost the ability to find myself again to allow myself to do these things that I could do before that I couldn't do again. And to this day, I've yet to find it again. I don't know if ego got in the way. I know ego got in the way. I don't know what else got in the way, whether women got in the way. I have to assume that yoga has similar practices that allow you to find, I hate to make it sound cheesy, your inner self. I don't know, because I don't know how else to explain it. I just play it off and go, man, all I did was hit it hard. It's no big deal. I just hit it hard. And that's not the case. That's not the case at all. There is a certain mental aspect to it that, again, I haven't found again ever. So does the third eye and the chakras and those aspects of yoga, are they part of your practice? And
No.
They're not. So I may be asking you a question that you don't know or care anything about.
Well, I know about it.
Okay.
Do I talk about it in my yoga classes? Very rarely. The beautiful thing about yoga is that you have to be present. You cannot be thinking about your grocery list, how many loads of laundry you need to, fold when you get home, what time you got to pick up your kids, your appointment next week for your hair. Like, you can't be thinking of any of this. You have to be totally present on your mat or you will fall. Which is amazing, because when you've got people with PTSD, a lot of us have anxiety and depression. Anxiety, we're thinking about the future. Depression, we're in the past, or our PTSD is pulling us into the past. But with yoga, we have to be totally present. And so for that hour, we're present. And so it is kind of this whole, a mind thing, if you will. But it's also a load off the stress. People get to be present. And so because of that, they're not very stressed in that time. When they're able to release the baggage from the psoas muscle, then they have more bandwidth. And they're able to then handle their life better. Now, that being said, you had mentioned that you really like martial arts. I think that any form of movement is fabulous. And there are folks with PTSD, not active PTSD, because that's different. On the other side, getting help, what have you. Martial arts is great. Now, I know for me personally, I used to do martial arts. And what did that do? I did Tang Soo Do.
Okay.
And for me, it made me a pissed off woman. And I tried to beat the crap out of everybody in the room. Like, it wasn't good for me.
Right.
I need the yoga. I need the calm, because I got enough fire. Like,
Right.
I don't need any more.
Right.
And so, again, if you are trying things, try different things. Maybe it's going for a hike. Maybe it's breaking concrete. Maybe it's taking a yoga class. Maybe it's going for a massage. Whatever that looks like, there's no wrong answer here. And keep trying.
I think that's the name of the episode right there, is keep trying. So in order to wrap this thing up, for one, we definitely want to make sure that everyone knows how to get a hold of you, how to find you online, how to find you in social media, that sort of thing. But is there one other thing, just one little tidbit that you'd want to leave us with before we get out of here?
One little tidbit.
Yeah, just one little morsel, little nugget of yogaism.
Yogaism? That's funny.
I can't get that little. I don't know if you've watched The Mandalorian, the new Disney Plus series where it's Star Wars.
I haven't yet.
I'm not going to spoil it then, but there's a baby
Yoda. I heard.
Yeah,
I heard.
You can't miss that, so I'm not spoiling anything. But it's the cutest little thing you've ever seen in your life. So it's always.
He's got really big eyes, I heard.
Massive
Or I saw
eyes,
a picture.
massive ears, and he's just cute as a button.
That's fabulous. I would just say keep trying. And, keep that book of everything that you've tried and go back and try different things. And make sure you have the right professional to meet your needs.
I think that's the huge part, is having the right professional. Because, even when I was soberizing, I didn't have the right professional, but I still managed to get there. But I have a different professional for follow-up care. So it works out that way.
Mm-hmm.
The right professional's key. All right. Well, Anissa, tell us how to get a hold of you and where we can find you and read more about you and learn more about Reiki yoga.
They're two different things. You're killing me, dude. They're two different things.
How did I not know that? Isn't
They're two
Reiki
different
yoga?
things.
Isn't Reiki?
No.
It's not a type of yoga?
Woo.
Then why do you have Reiki and yoga next to your name, like as the title, like Reiki Yoga Master?
No, I am a Reiki master.
Reiki Master.
And I am a certified yoga therapist.
Certified. Well, I thought they were the same. Wow. Can we start over? No. Okay. See, clarify. That's what you spent this whole time. I gave you 45 minutes to get your message across. I'm just kidding. Not really. That's all on me. I don't know how I honestly thought it was a form of yoga, and I still did.
Yeah.
Maybe I was resistant to hearing the difference there.
So what you saw on that video was a Reiki session.
Okay.
Okay, she had a chick on the table, and they were doing. That's all Reiki.
Okay.
Now, do we deal with chakras in yoga? Yes, we do.
Right.
But again, I don't talk about them much in my classes and things like that.
Maybe I need to
because we're busy talking about other things.
Okay. All right. Well, you put
so
me,
yes.
I'm not going to edit that because I need to be put in my place because I didn't get it right. So that's fine. I have no issues there. So I have issues understanding what the heck we were talking about, obviously. But beyond that, we're all good. So Anissa, please, by all means, give us your contact info so you can scold others.
www.traumahealingyoga.com.
There you go. And all of your links to your social media and everything are on there, I assume.
Everything's there.
Everything. One little central hub for all your...
Yeah, and I'm all over
yoga.
social media. I'm like a bad penny. I just keep showing up.
Okay, cool. Well, that's great. That's great because that's what you need to do to get everything out there.
Yeah.
So, all right, give me just a minute. Let me wrap this thing up, and I'll be right back with you. Hey, everybody. Thank you once again for listening to another awesome episode of the Readily Random Podcast. And as you know, there was a lot of information to digest today, and maybe I need to step back and think about it a little bit before I try to speak too intelligently about it. And even then, who knows? How often do I speak intelligently? That's why I have guests. Let them do all the intelligent speaking. I will probably give yoga another shot, but I'm going to find the right yoga instructor for me. I appreciate each and every one of you listening, and this has been another awesome episode of Readily Random. Y'all be cool. Take care. Bye.
You could be